Welcome to Behind Closed Books, the podcast where business owners and experts reveal the financial decisions that shape their success. Each episode brings you unscripted stories of turning points, hard calls, and the numbers that changed everything to pivot, recover, and grow. If you're building a business and ready to think differently about profit, pressure, and progress, behind every smart decision is a story worth telling. This is the show. Here is your host, Craig Sheets.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Behind Closed Books. My next guest today works at a nationally recognized payroll firm, and in the past, she's been recognized in the top 10% of her company. She's been a member of several organizations over her 10-plus year career, including the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, Chamber of Commerce, and many specialized teams within her organization. With that, everybody meet my next guest, Jenn Rush. Welcome to Behind Closed Books, Jenn.
Hi, Craig. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited today. A lot of people have questions surrounding payroll, especially as it relates to this new OBBA tax rule. There's so many B's in there. I'm not sure if I got them all, but I think I got them all. Just keep throwing B's until I get it. I thought we could talk about some topics that really matter to people.
Absolutely.
As a lot of our listeners are small business owners, and business owners are concerned about a lot of topics, especially this new rule regarding immigration matters. I heard there's a lot of scary rules about that. I thought we could talk about that today. And then I have a lot of my business owners have restaurants and have clients that are servers and waiters and waitresses. They're really excited but confused about the new tipped employees in the service-related industry. We can talk about that. And then, of course, there's executives. They're not left out of this as well. There's overtime wage rules for non-exempt employees and how that works. And then for employers, another opportunity for them for some tax savings. This has been around a while, but I think people forgot about it, is the maximization for tax savings utilizing the work opportunity tax credit. Yes. So I thought we can cover those topics today, and we can start wherever you'd like, Jenn.
Okay, yeah, great. I think probably the most relevant and probably on a lot of my clients' minds right now is the new laws surrounding immigration. I don't know if they're new, they're really more reinforced right now, and they're pretty scary.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty scary. Clients can get up to 6 months as jail time. I've been getting a lot of calls from my clients about, hey, what can we do to be more in compliance? What can we do to make sure our T's are crossed, our I's dotted, and we stay off of the government's radar? So there's a few things. So
absolutely. Yeah. Tell me more about that, because when you hear about immigration matters, you think I'm an employer. It's not really my responsibility. That's something to do with ICE or with the government and the legal, or I should say the police side of things. How does that affect me? Where does that roll down to my side of things?
Sure. No. And that's a big misconception, but it is very much on the business owner to make sure to verify that their new hires and their current employee staff, they are able and eligible to work within the United States. So it does fall on them, yes. And it falls on them on the front end within a certain period of days within hiring somebody.
So when I bring on, let's say myself or one of my listeners brings on, they're a small business owner, maybe they have 15 employees, and they say to themselves, I've heard this magic number. If I have less than 50 employees, none of these rules apply to me. Does the immigration matter apply to them because they have less than 50 employees? But that should apply to them as well, I think. So no matter what size your company is, you have to do certain steps when you hire a new employee. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes. It applies to everybody. And given kind of the commotion around it the last few years, if I were a business owner, I would make sure, even if I had one employee, that I did everything from a compliance standpoint to make sure they were able to work within the United States, just to keep my business in compliance.
Now I'm thinking, so a lot of small business owners, what I've found, they think I can do it myself. I'm a one-man band, or maybe I have 5 employees. I can do it all myself. I don't need, specialty people to help me, whether it's lawyers or payroll people, or hopefully not accountants. Sometimes they think they can do it alone without accountants or payroll people, which we know in the end gets them in trouble. But with the payroll services, do you guys have a process in place that helps protect the business owners from any kind of matters that might get them in trouble?
We do. Absolutely. Yes. So first and foremost, we are appointed with behind the scenes, the IRS, to go through what's called the verification system, if you will.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. Now, is that connected directly to the IRS, like through electronic means, or do you have to send in papers, or how does that work?
It's all done electronically behind the scenes. So I know
Okay.
with my organization and other larger payroll company organizations, they will connect behind the scenes with the IRS to do the e-verify system. So anytime you bring on a new employee, they go through a series of questions, new hire paperwork, which I'll dive into in just a second. And then all that information within our system is then remitted to the IRS to verify that they are able to legally work within the United States. Because as you and I know, Craig, anybody can put whatever on a piece of paper, but it's really the verification system behind the scenes and the documentation that they provide on the front end that helps to qualify them.
Right. I remember it used to be just fill out this I-9 or I-4 form and you're all good to go, or just give me your W-4 or W-9 form and that's it. But it sounds like the process got a little more complicated where it's almost out of the grasp of small business owners. So whatever fees you charge, I imagine they're more than made up because of the fact you're actually giving them a service that can keep them keep them in compliance. And even worse, maybe, as you mentioned, there's other penalties.
Yeah, there's a lot of components to it. The E-Verify portion is just one and probably the first step in making sure you're hiring somebody that is able to work within the United States. Of course, we have a system in place as well that helps new hires fill out a W-4 accurately, because as of 2020, that form changed and can be very confusing. So our system does help each employee fill it out accurately so everybody understands and everybody's on the same page. Along with that, of course, the I-9 form. So the two forms of verification that you need to provide to your employer to ensure you're able to work within the United States. That falls on the employee, but then the employer, it's their responsibility to look at the two forms of identification, make sure that nothing has expired on those forms of identification, everything is in compliance, and then they actually are required to sign the I-9 form, which a lot of employers do not realize, but they need to sign that I-9 form within 3 days of hiring the employee. So 3 days from the time the employee signs the I-9, the employer needs to also sign the I-9. And then it needs to be stored in a very safe and secure spot. So no other employees or anybody who's not authorized to view social security numbers or other private information cannot access that document.
I didn't realize that. So there's a time frame in which when they get onboarded or when they sign the documents, it has to be fully compliant with signatures. And that is very interesting. That's something a lot of small business owners probably didn't even know that.
No. And there's a lot of components that go into running a business and being compliant from so many different standpoints, right?
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to employees, it's more important now than ever to make sure that who you're hiring is legal, legit, and just make sure that everybody within the federal organization is happy and you're in compliance.
Absolutely. Because if you have a small business owner that thinks he can do it himself and he finds out later on that he's out of compliance, and maybe he missed a step, or he's thinking to himself, oh, I saved my whatever number of dollars per month by not having a payroll company. Look at me. But then let's say he doesn't do the onboarding information properly. He doesn't do the W-2 properly, or he misses quarterly filings. The fees associated with those penalties a lot of times exceed whatever fees you would end up charging to begin with to do it the right way.
Oh, absolutely. There's more value. And I'll dig into it as we talk about other related topics, that the onboarding, our electronic onboarding system and other major payroll companies' electronic onboarding system far outweighs the value of what you would pay if somebody came in from the state and did an audit on your company. Right. It used to be in the past, when I started my career 10 plus years ago, the state would come in, they would do an audit of the company. And if you were out of compliance from a new hire standpoint, it would be something along the lines of a slap on the wrist, maybe a penalty you needed to be paid, but it wasn't a huge deal. Where nowadays, especially the last couple of years, we're talking about jail time. And so not only are you spending time away from your family and your business, but who's going to run that small business for you? There's a lot that can be impacted by not doing it the right way.
Hearing penalties is one thing that can be upsetting, but jail time, that's a whole nother level where it's just, you really got to keep your ducks in a row and cross your T's and dot your I's. And yes, like we said before, not even the cost of penalties of being worth having a payroll company, but you could potentially save them the time in jail maybe too. So that's a very scary rule. And I think that's something to keep an eye out for. And as far as when knowing you have systems in place within your organization, has to make your clients feel really good about that.
Absolutely. I talked to my current client base about it, especially when this all really started to be reinforced a few years ago. I contacted all of my current clients, made sure they were okay. But really where I've seen the switch is people used to be more reactive, and now people are starting to be more proactive. And I think that approach in and of itself is going to save them a lot of time and money within their organization.
That's great. That's great. And I'm sure there's other topics, and we've even mentioned a few other topics today. We talking about for service related business. Now I call that industry from the restaurants where people are getting tipped. I call it service related industry. Is that a good terminology to use for that industry?
It is. It is. Yeah. There's a couple of different ways you can go about it. I think the term customarily tipped organizations is the new term that I've found from the Big Beautiful Bill.
I want to stay in compliance with the way people say things because it changes. Even the name of this rule, the name of the new tax law, everyone's trying to get that OBBBBBA.
Yep.
How many B's is in there? I don't know. Just keep saying them and you'll get it right eventually.
The Big Beautiful Bill. Yes. It's confusing, but it's rewarding on the same side. There's a lot of good to it. I think it's a matter of clearing up what is and what isn't in regards to tips and overtime.
And I think having a senior partner on your side from a payroll standpoint, and you have such a large organization behind you that helps you keep your clients and customers in compliance, makes the customer feel much better and at ease saying, look, I have somebody here on my side I can talk to. They know the rules, even if I don't. And it makes using a payroll company even more important now than ever.
Oh, gosh, absolutely. So we have an entire department dedicated to making sure whatever new rules or legislations come out are put into easy to understand terms, not only to the people within my organization, but then how we can relate to our clients. So everybody very easily understands. Also, being a part of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, they provide a ton of information for restaurants, which is a very common service-based industry. Information coming from everywhere that really helps us to keep our clients in compliance. I know we keep using that term, but
no, it's a good word. It's very hard to take other adjectives to replace it because that is the right word. But in Florida, that's where we're based. Doesn't mean we don't have clients in other states, but Florida, obviously, and especially the Orlando area, has a lot of businesses and restaurants related to that service related or tipped businesses, as you mentioned earlier. So what is the new tipped employee rule and how does it work right now?
Yeah. So I want to clear up, there's a little bit of confusion because it is the quote unquote no tax on tips or no tax on overtime.
Right.
Which can
hear people say that, but you can't just say that carte blanche because I know there's a rule. I know the IRS and I know they never do all together. There's got to be some kind of caveats within there. People keep going around saying there's no tax on tips. There's limits, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yep. So first, it mainly impacts the federal income tax.
Okay.
Not the FICA. And not only that, it's a deduction. So you still pay your taxes on your tips and your overtime on your paycheck from an employee standpoint.
Okay.
But it is shown as a deduction on the W-2 at the end of the year for the employee, and the employer can also take a deduction at the end.
So what you're saying is if I made $100,000 in the year, I'd show $100,000 for tips on there, whatever the tips were on there. But you're saying there's a special new line on the W-2, which will show a deduction then from that total amount of wages?
Correct. From what I understand, yes. And we're still all trying to understand the bigger picture of it as well. But yes, from my organization standpoint, what we do is first we help clear up that misconception. We've been getting a lot of calls of, hey, why are tips still getting taken out of my paycheck?
Right, of course.
So we help clear that up. But then also at the end of the year, we make sure the W-2s are accurate from a deduction standpoint, where the deduction is supposed to be on the W-2s, along with where the paperwork that we will provide our clients to then provide to their CPAs and their accountants at the end of the year to ensure that they get the deduction credit that the business deserves as well.
And what I noticed, we as a CPA firm, we always pay for our tax software up front, and we're paying for the 2025 software already. But I know the forms aren't even out yet. So I'm thinking, boy, I'm paying for something that's not even there. I bet the W-2s are the same way. They probably haven't introduced the actual official 2025 W-2 yet, have they?
From my understanding, there's still a lot of gray area around how that's going to look given the Big Beautiful Bill. So as we're getting information from the IRS, we're feeding it out as we're getting it. But to answer your question, yes, there's still a lot of gray area around the specifics of the W-2 and how it's going to look.
And as I understand from the overtime, we'll blend the two topics together a little bit. So the tipped employees relate to anybody who's in the service-related industry. I think we called it tipped businesses a minute ago. And those are people that receive, in addition to their wage, and some of them get a small wage. They're only making $2.15, and then the rest goes to tips unless it doesn't reach the minimum wage. Then they have to make at least minimum wage. So it gets a little confusing there. But the tipped employees, they have an exemption, I believe, or as you said, a deduction. Do you know how much that deduction is for the tipped employees at the end of the year?
Yep, up to $12,500, I believe.
Okay. So if they're making, again, earlier we were saying $100,000, then they're going to show on their W-2, most likely on line 1, the $100,000 or whatever line it is for the tips.
Sure.
But they're also going to receive another line item, which we don't know where it is yet, for the $12,500, which then I would then receive that as a CPA, and I'll take a deduction then on their tax return. And that's where we kind of work in tandem. And a lot of times payroll companies and CPAs work like that. They work in tandem together.
Absolutely.
You provide the info, then we take it from there. So tipped employees, $12,500. And then for overtime wage rules, do you know what kinds of employees receive that? Whether is it exempt, non-exempt?
So it's non-exempt employees. And my understanding is it is the customarily, hopefully I'm saying that right, customarily tipped organization. So what that falls into is, like we mentioned before, the restaurants, drivers, so delivery drivers, beauty supply or beauty services so people who, when you think historically, have received tips.
Right.
In these industries, not anybody new who's receiving tips or anybody who's decided to throw it into their business as of yesterday or last year. It's really historically the businesses that have been receiving tips up until this point.
Now, with the overtime rule for the non-exempt, so they're going to receive the same thing. Their W-2 should, again, we don't know yet, but should have that line 1 for the $100,000 in this example. And then they're going to have that deduction for $12,500.
Sure.
But what I've found, and I did a little bit of research on this as well, and again, there's so many pages of code to go through that I always caveat that it's dangerous to give out that advice up front, because there could be page 625,001 could be, wait, ignore page 6,522, whatever. So what I understand is you get the 12,500, but just to make things more fun, because the IRS likes to make things difficult, and this is more on the tax side, which you wouldn't be involved in on the payroll side, because this is something that CPAs have to take account for, is there's a phase out. So what happens is if you're a single taxpayer, and a single taxpayer just themselves with not married, a single taxpayer, if they make more than $150,000, they actually get a phase out of that $12,500 deduction. So it's almost, hey, we're giving it to you, but they're slowly yanking the rug out a little bit, saying it's there, but if you make too much, we're going to pull that rug out right from underneath you. So it's, first off, like you said, everybody thinks all tips aren't taxed, right? They think, oh, no tip should be taxed. And then they find out it's a $12,500 deduction. So there's a, oh, darn, number one. And then number two is, it sounds like there is, I believe, a phase out. So if you make too much, you also can lose the whole $12,500. There's a phase out for $150,000 for single, and it's a $300,000 phase out for married individuals. Unfortunately, the IRS giveth, the IRS taketh away. That's just how they are. Let's talk, before we talked earlier about another topic that we want to discuss today, is how to maximize tax savings for the work opportunity tax credit. Jen, do you want to talk a little more about that?
Absolutely, yes. And this is a topic where I like to talk about, I know we're on the topic of customarily tipped organizations. So really this applies to any organization that has high turnover rate, but very specifically my restaurants, since we're on the topic of them, and construction. And I'll dive into why. It's crazy because this tax credit, it can be utilized by, again, those are the most common organizations, but really any business that falls into the criteria I'm about to talk about. But it's underutilized substantially. I think only 10% of businesses in the United States actually take advantage of it. And it's because the process itself can be very confusing. So I think some people are just, I don't even want to deal with it. But you can essentially receive up to $9,600 per new hire.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, for just understanding or using an organization, a payroll organization that is able to help you with this matter. So,
And it's a tax credit, I think, not a deduction. So that's a dollar for dollar reduction of your taxes, I understand it.
yeah. So it's a tax credit. I'll go over
Yeah.
what it is and how our organization helps clients.
This sounds exciting. Anytime I think a small business owner hears about an underutilized deduction or credit, I should say, they're all ears. So yeah, go ahead, take away.
Yeah, and it can be very financially rewarding if you know how to use it. What the Work Opportunity Tax Credit is a program put in place by the government that says, hey, if you're a business owner and you hire employees within certain demographic groups, basically people that we want into the workforce, we will incentivize you by giving you a tax credit up to $9,600 per new hire if you fall into certain criteria and if you file the forms within a certain amount of days. Now, the different demographic groups are going to be veterans. That's a big one. I think veterans are one of the most highly qualified ones on the list.
Okay.
Employees working within summer youth programs. So working for your company for the summer while also in school is my understanding.
Okay.
Ex-felons. So if you've just come back out into the workforce, opportunities to work. Felons, families that are on food stamps, so that just need a little bit more assistance from the government.
Okay.
If you live or reside in a certain rural area, that's another big one.
Okay.
So where this gets sticky is as a business owner, you're not allowed to ask these questions, some of these questions during the interview process.
You wouldn't, would you?
Yeah, it's not typically the questions you like to ask on the interview process. However, what our system does and what a lot of the programs put in place to screen these tax credits do is behind the scenes when you fill out an application as a new hire, as an applicant looking to fill a position, you fill in a bunch of details about yourself, where you live, what your past is, all this information. We have an algorithm that will actually screen all this info and then shoot out to the business owner, hey, Jerry qualifies for up to $5,000 in tax credits based on X, Y, and Z. Do you want to go ahead and take advantage of it? The business owner would then say yes. And then we would prepare the paperwork. Go ahead. Sorry.
So you're the front line here, because I was thinking, if imagine somebody, they've been in the military for 22 years, they're retired. They're thinking, boy, am I going to get a second career here? They're maybe moving from Virginia Beach, big area for the Navy. And I think, I don't know where the armies are based. There's all sorts of bases around there. Thinking, what am I going to do? I'm here. I have no place to go work. Am I going to do a second career? Meanwhile, this is something that a lot of employers would find desirable to hire people that were from the military. And without, like you said, going out there and saying, okay, if you're ex-military, raise your hand. You want to find it out more passively on the back end, and you have systems in place to find that. That's exciting.
Absolutely. Yep. We use an algorithm to screen the paperwork. So that's one component. The other component is how long they work for the company. So if they work for the company for 90 days as opposed to 30 days, then the business itself could qualify for more of a tax credit for the employee that worked for 90 days as opposed to 30. So there's thresholds put in place for tenure for that new hire as well.
And without getting into detail, you'd mentioned there's different criteria. Is it that if you're just hire I'm forgetting the word, but let's say retired military, sorry, that's the right word, retired military person, do they get the full $9,600 credit, or is there each different criteria brings in a certain amount of sliver of the $9,600?
So it's each certain criteria brings in a certain sliver. So it's not black and white, right? It depends not only on the demographic group, but it depends on the tenure. And then after a certain period of time, once you can show how long the employee has been there and whether or not they fall into one or more of those demographic categories, then the qualification is put in place. Now, I'll get calls all the time from clients being like, oh, I hired a veteran. He's been with me for 6 months. So where's my tax credit?
Where's my money? Where's my money? I know I got something coming to me. What are we doing?
Yeah. They don't get a check in the mail like yesterday. The way it works is at the end of the year, we put everybody who qualified for the Work Opportunity Tax Credit onto a very convenient report. And then, like I was talking about earlier with the big, beautiful bill criteria and deductions and tax credits, we provide that to the CPA or accountant, and then they handle that when they file the corporate tax return.
Yeah, when you file the corporate tax return, there's a line item on there. And what happens is the corporation, and there's different entities, there's what they call pass-through entities, partnerships, and S corporations. You file the return, and of course, those entities don't pay tax as a rule. They pass through. That's why they call them pass-through entities. They pass through the income to their personal return. But when you file the corporate return, what happens is there's a line on a form called K1 that says credits. There's a line just sits, I don't know the number off the top of my head for partnerships, K1s and S Corps, K1s, but it says credits, and there's different letters that associate different credits. And when you have the right letter next to it, it'll say credit for work opportunity credit. And then that flows through onto their personal return. And then when they go to pay their taxes, they'll see a line item on page 2, which is from Schedule 3, I believe it is. It shows all the different credits. It'll show that work opportunity credit, and that'll go to reduce their tax liability. And again, I want people to know a deduction reduces your income, but a credit reduces your taxes dollar for dollar. They're liquid gold when it comes to taxes.
Absolutely. And that's why I spread the word as much as I possibly can, especially to my construction or restaurant clients, but really anybody who's doing like a mass hiring.
I was going to ask you, can it be any industry? You mentioned the two, but could it be any industry at all, whether you're service related or manufacturing? As long as they're a veteran, they can still get that. And I got the word right, veteran. I'd forgotten earlier. I got that word back. But it doesn't have to be certain industries. It's the employee that's hired counts more than the industry they're in.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. There are just some industries where it's more prevalent than others, but it's any industry, and with just one employee that might fall into that one of those certain demographic groups could qualify for the work opportunity tax credit.
And like you mentioned, the total available, I think you said was 9,600, but just hitting just a veteran alone, that may not get you the full credit. And maybe a third of that credit. They'd have to also have different criteria, or someone who's not a veteran who maybe has different circumstances, whether on food stamps or, Jen, I think if they're homeless, I forgot. I think that was one of the criteria. I can't remember the other ones, but each of those have their own facet. And like you said, in addition to that, then it's how long they stay with the company. So you got multiple layers of what they, where they were before you're hired, and then another layer of how long they stay with you. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. How long they're employed within the company. Because if you think about it, the program could be taken advantage of if employees come in, hired for a week, and then they're gone.
Right.
Do that for 20 people and then try to file work opportunity tax credits on all those 20 people that worked there for a week. You're probably not going to get much compared.
Absolutely. Now this isn't, and you may not know this answer, and it just popped in my head, and I may not even know the answer, but I'll say it anyways. What if someone's hired in, let's say, December, and they work for that month, and they work for the entire next year? Do they get 1/3 of that because they're worked for a month in 1 year, and the other 2/3 the next year, or does it just push to the next year because they have to fulfill the full 90 days first?
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
I feel bad putting you on the spot, and nobody knows all the answers, but I'm thinking, you know what? As I asked it, I'm thinking I answered my own question, because you got to fulfill those 90 days before you're eligible. So I bet if they're hired in December, they probably don't qualify until February of the next year, because that would be the 90-day mark. So it would push to the next year. That makes sense.
I would assume. And I think, I don't know if it's 90 days is the exact cutoff. There might be 60 days or 180 days or something, but I know it's around a certain tenure.
And whatever that is, I bet they have to meet that requirement. And like I said, with the OBBA, you don't know all the rules. Things can change. This has been around for a while, but I would think they'd have to fulfill the full time frame before they were eligible for that full amount. So it makes sense. It's exciting because a lot of small business owners don't realize that this credit is even available to them. They're thinking, oh, I know all the different deductions and this or that, but a payroll company is really the best organization to fulfill this credit. Not even the CPA would know this, because when I get the P&L at the end of the year, I get a P&L, it'll say I have two different categories. One's called owner's wages, and the other is just wages. So I'm thinking, okay, for the category of wages. I don't know where they're from. I don't know their background. I don't know if they're veterans, and nor would a CPA know that granular level. So the payroll company is so vital to that process.
Absolutely. And going back to what you said earlier, that's exactly why the payroll company, the credible payroll company, obviously there's a ton of options out there. So you want to make sure you're working with a very credible one. And the accountant, it is very important that the two are working together and not speaking two different languages. So every client that I meet, I know you and I have a fair amount of clients together as well. We work together as a team to support that client, because one usually can't be as effective as one can't be effective without the other.
100%. And I see a lot of people going with these companies. I don't know if I have it right. Maybe whether sole payroll is done, I think either by the employer himself, and they just like process the paperwork, but they have to file their own quarterly reports. I can't think of some of the self-provided ones out there, but there's the organizations where the payroll company itself doesn't have support behind the scenes. It leaves it to the employer to file the actual reports, and for any notices, the employer to handle notices, and again, to identify people who are eligible for work opportunity credit would fall in that as well. So that alone, again, we talked about this earlier, having that payroll company can not only come in handy, but maybe even pay for itself. There's different segments, whether you're a veteran or if you're live in a certain area. And each of those, like you said, it's not the full amount. Each one qualifies for a portion of the total $9,600.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. There's so many different variables to it. It's hard to just pinpoint, hey, you're a veteran, here's how much you qualify for. There's the tenure, there's which category you fall in. And this is why only 10% of the business owners out there in the United States actually utilize it, because not only is it confusing from a company standpoint, but also the paperwork can be a bit tedious, which is why using a credible payroll company is very important to utilizing the tax credits appropriately. Absolutely. You guys can vet through those things. I like that word. You don't get to throw that word around very often. You can vet through all the different criteria to utilize it. And you want to you give people a chance to feel confident, to know that there's taxes out there and credits out there, I should say, for their taxes and help them along the way. So that's great. And we've touched on some of the details as far as payroll, but is there any other trends or latest things in the payroll world that something for people to look out for? Yeah, good question. I think especially post 2020, I would say prior to 2020, I didn't get a whole lot of emphasis or questions from clients surrounding HR, employee handbooks, job descriptions, things along those lines. For some reason, post 2020 has really changed the workforce and everything from a compliance standpoint. So here's why. Okay. If an employer has an employee and they fire them, let's just say the employee deserves to be fired. There are a number of things they're not doing appropriately. They get fired. That employee then goes and hires a labor law attorney. Oh, one of the first things, nobody wants to hear this. Nobody wants to hear that. No, one of the very first things the labor law attorney will ask the business owner for is, hey, do you have an employee handbook set in place with job descriptions outlining exactly what the employee is supposed to do on a day-to-day basis? And then did the employee sign along with the employer showing there's documentation that both agree? 9.5 times out of 10, the answer is no. I gave the employee a handshake. We agreed verbally. I thought that we're both adults, that we both understood, we're both on the same page. And that is all good and well until it's not. So it is very important. I tell my clients, it doesn't matter if you have one employee or if you have 500 employees, get an employee handbook in place, get those job descriptions laid out. So that way it is in writing, both sign off on it. And if you ever do, God forbid, have to go to court to defend yourself as a business owner, you have it in writing and a signature from the employee stating they understood what they were supposed to do on a day-to-day basis and that it was justified why they got terminated. And that can be utilized later on if something happens. Like you said, if they bring a labor law attorney in, you'll be covered because it's written in paper, it's signed by the employee and signed by you with a date, and say, look, it was all spelled out right here. Now, the good thing is it's spelled out, but then if you find out as the employer, geez, I forgot, I deviated from this substantially. All of a sudden I had them doing closing at a restaurant and opening, and they're just supposed to be a server, and I was putting more on them. Then you could find, I just use that example, but you could find out all of a sudden that maybe I was putting too much on that employee, and it may come to light after the fact that they weren't doing it properly. Sure, absolutely. My clients update their employee handbooks at least annually, if not more often than that. And if you promote an employee or things change, you want to get that signature updated. You want to make sure everything is up to date with, again, the employee's position and what's required of them is the most important. Do you work with an attorney to do that? Or do you guys internally at your company do employee handbooks start to finish? Yeah, so we actually internally, we have a system in place where we provide legally reviewed documentation and legal help we partner with the organization SHRM, which is a huge HR organization, very prevalent here in Orlando. Right. We partner with them within Heartland's organization. to ensure that legally reviewed documents are in place, such as probationary letters, 90-day probationary letters, really forms that aren't required, but highly recommended from an HR standpoint.
Right. Now, would you work with outside firms, or you usually just partner with that one firm typically?
So Heartland, my organization, partners with that firm. I have partnerships with attorneys that help me in different situations outside of that. But yes, Heartland itself utilizes SHRM.
Okay, that's great. And then getting that in place makes a huge difference. Number one, it's a burden off the employer's shoulder, knowing, right, I'm covered because they're doing these certain things, X, Y, Z. And then you say that, hey, I provide a bump or a nudge to my customers to say, update it. They're going to change roles. No one's going to stay in the same spot for the next 10 years. Roles are going to change.
Absolutely. And there's so much to an employee handbook. The job descriptions is just really, in my opinion, the bare minimum. It scratches the surface of what at least you should do. Get all into state unemployment claims and employees that work for you for 10 days and try to file unemployment and how to protect yourself from that standpoint. There's a lot of different avenues we can go down, but really the point is that you want legal representation from an HR standpoint if you're a business, no matter what your employee count is.
Absolutely, 100%. And you touched on something earlier in transition, and I don't know if this is something you're familiar with, but a lot of my clients mentioned this 50 employee rule, and it has a different rules under 50 and over 50. And I know we talk about this before. Are you familiar with that benchmark of the over 50 employees and under 50 employees, what that signifies?
A little bit. So there's many different areas that can apply to. Benefits really is the hot topic in my industry when it comes to over 50 employee counts, and health insurance and how that's all handled.
And so they have it in place, I believe. If there's over 50 employees, they have to have certain things in place, right? So that's more of a HR side of things and making sure that they're in compliance, because employers will say, I'm just going to hang at the 49 employee mark or the 48 employee mark. And so don't be afraid to grow just because there's a little bit of compliance work, because think of all the other compliance things you do. You're in compliance with the IRS with your tax filings. You're in compliance with payroll by doing quarterly reports. Don't hang your hat on not growing your business because you're afraid to hit another benchmark. It's just it's a growing pain.
Oh, absolutely. And then you don't want to be that organization that stays right underneath the threshold. And then your competitor is over here, not afraid to go over the 50 employee mark. Your employees, I've seen it happen so many times. They will make that jump to get the extra benefits, to get the extra perks, to work for your competitor just because they're willing to put things into compliance. So if you're that close, just do it.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really good point. Competitive advantage. You don't want to be stuck behind the curve. And a lot of companies nowadays offer benefits. It's nothing to be afraid of. And payroll companies that are reputable can work with those benefits. It doesn't scare payroll companies. So that's good.
Absolutely. And it's not, I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's too expensive for them to put in place. But I have companies that have very affordable programs in place for benefits and HR who have 15 employees, 20 employees. There's a lot of flexibility in the HR benefits world these days.
Right. That's good. That's great to know. And I'm just trying to think other trends. I'm trying to think other things I've heard from business owners when it comes to payroll. And I was just thinking here off the top of my head that they want to make sure that, I'm trying to think what I had the other day. Somebody mentioning about the quarterly filings, making sure that those are done. And if there's a notice, do you guys handle notices from the IRS or the state of, just say state of, because it could be multiple states, but do you handle state and federal notices on behalf of your customers?
We do, yes. As long as they were utilizing our service during that time. And really it's due to when they signed the power of attorney with Heartland. As long as they're covered under our power of attorney during the time frame they receive that letter, right, and the time frame the notice is referencing to, then yes, we communicate with the IRS or the state of Florida or the state of California or whomever, whatever agency is reaching out to them saying there's a discrepancy, we rectify that. And that's a huge advantage of utilizing a payroll company that has the power of attorney to handle those matters on your behalf.
That's great. And then do you handle, if there's any kind of, I just had on the tip of my tongue while I was going to ask about payroll related matters. We're just talking about notices, and I just had a question I was going to ask about. I hate when that happens. You get that thought on the tongue, your tongue, and then you're like, I have it, and then you lose it within a second. I think it was something to do with compliant with
quarterly returns.
Yeah. What about new business owners that we mentioned about state compliance? And I know there's a big, scary topic for new business owners when it comes to states getting the unemployment ID number. Do you assist with that, or is that something you have them do?
No, so we absolutely assist with it. Yes. So here in the state of Florida, I'm very familiar with the application. I will hold my client's hand from start to finish over the course of over 10 years. I'm again very familiar with the questions they ask and getting through that process efficiently. It's a very tedious process. So business owners, as Craig, they don't want to deal with it.
No, they don't want to deal with it at all. You're 100% right. No, like, oh, get that away from you. They're like, oh no, it's scary.
Yeah, and Florida is one of the easy states. California, New York, where you have local tax, where you've got state tax, it can be very confusing and very overwhelming. So we help with not only Florida, but any other state within the United States as well.
I think New York, I was just talking to somebody about this. New York has a state of New York tax. They have a city of Manhattan tax. And if you live in Yonkers and you're privileged to live in Yonkers, there's a city tax in Yonkers. So someone living in Yonkers would pay federal tax, New York state tax, New York City tax, and you're like, wow, it's much more privileged to live out there because that's really expensive. That's a lot of taxes you're paying.
That's when you pay the professionals, right, to take care of it for you because, yeah, I wouldn't want to have to take that on as a business owner myself.
No, bring that in for sure. Absolutely. So it's been great. I'm glad we got a chance to go through some of the trends and understand more of the different topics that business owners can look to. But these, of course, aren't all the topics. There's other topics, and they can talk to you about that. But I thought I would switch over gears to you as an actual person, Jen, and talk about you. Maybe kind of walk me through where, not so much just a resume version of it, but more your background and where did you grow up and family life and everything like that. Kind of bring me back through from when you were, I don't know, birth, but walk me through about Jen.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Virginia, actually. I was born in Virginia. My parents split up very early on, very close with both of them, but I just, from a very early age, would go from house to house. My mom moved here to Florida, and my dad said, oh, no way, am I living without my daughter? So he followed shortly thereafter, and I continued being in a dual household situation with them for the remainder of my life. So in high school, I went from living with my mom primarily to living with my dad. And then that's when I moved here to Central Florida. So I have been here, oh my goodness, 25 years. Yeah, I've been in the Central Florida area, specifically the north part of Central Florida, for quite some time. I actually I studied and was very interested in psychology and then business. So I knew I wanted to be in business. Both my parents were in business in some way, shape, or form. And then the psychology around people, right? It's why they do the things they do, how the mind works. It was also interesting to me. So that's what I went to college for. Major in psychology, minor in business. And wanted actually to specialize in children who went through early on trauma and helping them get through early trauma that then impacted them as adults or as teens and help them work through that. After I graduated, I said, let me take a second before I get into my master's, make sure this is exactly what I want to do. And so I fell into, we always say that term, started off with a payroll organization, not the one I'm with now, another one, working internally. So that's where I learned how to service clients. I learned who the IRS was, who the Social Security Administration was, who the state of Florida was, and learned the various taxes within each organization, how to be in compliance with each, the forms when they're due, the end of the year forms, the accountants, all of it, the internal portion of it. And then I moved up through operations to help build out new accounts. So building out the account to then like service the specific client. So the needs of that client had to be built differently than the needs of another client. So I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, you're working on the front end, getting them service, not just the service end, but you started building into the relationship building, it sounds like.
Yes, the relationship building, the training. So then I would train them on how to use our software at the time. And then I realized that I wanted to be, I think the psychology aspect of the interest of psychology, I wanted to learn about people. I wanted to meet clients face to face and not just over the phone. And so that's when I made the transition from working behind the scenes internally and training clients and managing their accounts to then going out, being a part of these professional organizations, being a part of the networking and meeting business owners and figuring out, okay, what are your real needs that are outside of just payroll, and just really building long-term lasting relationships that led to where I am today.
And that's amazing. You mentioned, and I'm going back to what you mentioned, that you went to school for psychology and Then you had mentioned that you were in Virginia. Whereabouts in Virginia did you grow up?
Specifically, it was a town called Springfield.
I always think of Massachusetts for some reason. Don't I? From Springfield or Illinois? I don't know why I think that. Is that inland more, or is that by the coast?
To be honest with you, I'm not 100%. I was so young. I mean, we moved here when I was 8. So to be specific whereabouts, I guess I should know more. But my parents bounced around a lot. They followed their career paths, and I followed as a kid. I landed here in Central Florida.
What did your family do? What industry were they in?
Yeah, so my mom was like in the IT world in business. So she did everything from like the administrative assistants of the IT world to just various roles within that specific organization.
Okay.
My dad was in business, but more on the construction side. Yeah. So I lean on that too, with a huge portion of my book of business being in construction. How they work, how they operate, what's important to them. I lean on that. My dad is a purchasing manager.
It's funny, as I'm touching on what you had said, you'd mentioned about the psychology, and then you mentioned some of your background and some of the psychology of that with being in different homes. And you said you want to be there to help other people. And that's interesting how what your life experience did brought you to want to help other people and to be there. And then construction, as you mentioned, with your dad. And now you service a lot of construction people. So you took a lot of empathy from your childhood and brought that into what you do today. And that's amazing.
I think a lot of us do subconsciously. We watch our parents. We see what they do on a day-to-day basis. My mom worked hard. My dad worked hard. And being an adult, I'm very service-based to my clients. And I saw that a lot with my parents. And again, I do think it's a very subconscious thing that we do as children, as we grow into adults, what we do, how we behave ourselves.
Absolutely. It's funny. The formative years in your childhood can make a big difference. As you get older, what do they say? The first 6 years are really formative years. And from there, obviously life can still help you, but those 5 or 6 years make a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
And then, do you have any other family or any other siblings?
Yeah, I do have a half brother. He lives over in Jacksonville. So I see him pretty often. And then we live really close to my husband's family. So they're all here in Central Florida. My dad's in Daytona. So I see my dad often too. I have a son. I have another baby on the way. So
what do you do? Congratulations. Is it going to be a boy or a girl?
A girl.
Wow. So you got a whole family. You have the one boy, one girl, you said? It's like that, the white picket fence, and one boy, one girl. You got the family going there perfectly. Yeah, my sister lives up in Jacksonville as well. I'm actually going there on Friday. And you may not know this, a little fun fact. They have a local baseball team in Jacksonville. I'm from Rochester originally. And we have a team called the Red Wings. They feed the Orioles organization, or at least they used to. The team in Jacksonville, I'll give you a guess. Maybe just take a guess what you think the name of the team is in Jacksonville, the minor league team. What a weird name. Are you ready for it?
No, you tell me.
Jumbo Shrimp.
Oh, I would never have guessed that.
He's the jump. I was going with my sister who bought the tickets, and I said, "Hey, I got the tickets for the game Friday." She's great. I'm like, Jumbo Shrimp. She's like, yeah, I know. We moved here like 20 years ago. We can't believe our team name is Jumbo Shrimp. So next time you talk to, what did you say lives in Jacksonville?
My brother.
Just say, hey, you see any Jumbo Shrimp games? What are you talking about?
That's really funny. So my husband and I both went to college at UNF. So we lived in Jacksonville for a handful of years. And I can't say that I've ever heard of the Jumbo Shrimp. I also wasn't huge into going to sports games at that time either. So yeah,
baseball games aren't something everybody always does. But that's a little known fact that I only found out about recently. And that area up there is beautiful up in Jacksonville. And so you went to school in, where is UNF? Is that right in downtown Jacksonville?
No, it's more towards the coast. So it's probably 10, maybe 15 minutes from Jacksonville Beach. 10, 15 minutes inland.
Okay. My sister's in Fruit Cove, I think it is. That's more south. So I know that's a very long, actually, let's say it's the largest by landmass city in America.
Yes. Jacksonville's massive. There are parts of it that I still don't know exist. So yeah.
Interesting place. And being here, like you said, you've been in North Orlando for a while, but you service clients all over. So you must be able to travel a lot around the state, or do you do mostly virtual now?
So post 2020, virtual has become very common. Prior to that, and I still will travel for clients, absolutely, if they feel it's necessary and they want me there. I understand that aspect of it, especially my multi-restaurant organization. So if they've got 5 restaurants and we have a parent company and there's it's a little bit more complicated than just your one restaurant group. Yes, I will fly up there. I will make sure they're serviced properly. Everything's put in place. And then I service them moving forward from a virtual standpoint.
Okay, that's interesting. And then trying to think, do you have any like favorite like hobbies and things you do, or any kind of vacation spots you like to go to?
Yeah, my husband and I are huge beach people. My son is not even a year and a half old, but the second we take him out of the car and we're at the beach, he just points at the ocean and smiles and runs. And going to college in Jack's Beach. And then my husband's a huge surfer. So we just, we love the beach. So really, we spend a ton of time there. Other than that, we love just building our family. It's all consuming right now because, again, my son is still very young. I'm pregnant again. So just getting the family together and
it's a lot. You're doing you're in a transition point of family where you're, like you said, you're pregnant for the second time, which is great. And then you're having like the family now from a young age. And we talked about that earlier, the formative years, and you with psychology, like these years are important. A lot of people think, it's not till they get to high school or college, but really by then, not society has them, but they're influenced by their friends by that point. By the time they're in high school, I had kids, and by the time they got to high school, I had about this much influence on the kids. Their friends had more influence than I did. So
it changes quick. That's what I hear. So we are just trying to keep our head above water, stay in the trends, not only with family and friends, the IRS, and what's going on with everything in our professional lives. We're juggling it all right now.
Absolutely. It's a lot you got to take on. That's great. And it's been great having you on the show. And I know you have a lot of things going on, and I'm glad you took the time to sit and talk with us. I'm sure my audience will appreciate all the knowledge you can get on payroll related services and all the different topics, but I don't think that's everything as far as payroll. I'm sure more things, and maybe you can talk a little bit about your exact title now and where you work and how people can contact you. Maybe talk a little bit more about you as a professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I connect with all different industries all over the nation. So really, I have experience in almost every industry at this point. I'm coming up on 11 years in the payroll industry. And I like to think I'm pretty well-rounded, right? Working on the back end, building out accounts, training clients, being out in the field with clients is really where I got a lot of industry-specific knowledge. And it's not a one-size-fits-all in the payroll world, right? Like you can find a payroll tax compliance solution in a lot of different areas nowadays. It's really where my value comes in is I sit down with a business owner and I say, okay, where are we at as far as the position of where you are in your business? Are you just opening and you're looking to do a mass hiring? Are you stable in business and you're looking to just keep afloat and just maybe put things into compliance, make sure all your T's are crossed, I's are dotted, or are you looking for an exit strategy? And depending on where somebody is in the phase or the cycle of their business, depends on the solution I provide them. So I don't come in and say, who's doing your payroll and taxes? Let me make sure you're in compliance. No, there is so much more to making sure you are in a well-rounded spot and you're in compliance as a business than just ensuring your employees get paid and your taxes get paid.
Yeah, yes, it's a personal relationship you have with your advisor. It's also the company that you're working with has your back in case something happens. Yes. And then you also want to know that it's a reputable company. It's going to be here tomorrow. There's been payroll companies that I've worked with in the past with customers, and they're not around anymore. I'll tell you that. They weren't stable enough to stay around. So you want to make sure you're with a good company and a good organization. What's your title now? What's the company you work for? How can people get a hold of you? What's your contact information?
Yeah, absolutely. I call myself many different things over the years, but really Employee Management Solutions, I think covers the full scope of everything I do from a recruiting standpoint from hire through fire is what I always say. I help business owners manage their employees from the hiring process through the firing process.
Right. Okay.
That's everything from hiring employees to keeping track of their time, to onboarding them legally, and then when it's time to let them go or when it's time to have them retire. So that's a full scope from a very high level point of view. The best way to get a hold of me, I put my work phone number out there for anybody who wants to call, text me, ask questions. I'm here as a resource, whether we're doing business together or not. So my phone number is, should I relay my phone number?
Yeah, relay whatever number you want people to contact, the people will be contacting you. So definitely relay the number you'd like for sure.
Sure. Okay. It's area code 321-262-1247. My company.
Sure. I always have people say it again. Sorry. Just make sure.
It's okay. area code 321-262-1247.
Okay.
And Heartland Payroll Solutions is the organization that I represent, I work for. And I'm just happy to be a resource for anybody in the community.
Is there an email or a website they can go to get a hold of you via other options?
Absolutely. So if you just look up Heartland Payroll Solutions, it'll take you straight to our website. It'll show you all the various different services that we offer. And then email is Jennifer, JENNIFER.Rush. And that's at e-hps.com.
And I always see that dash in there, and I'm always thinking, is that an underscore or a dash? But
No,
it's an actual dash. So it's the, I don't know, next to the zero key, between the zero key and the plus sign.
It's a dash. Yeah.
My keyboard now. Yeah, you don't see many dashes in emails, so that's important to add that in there.
Absolutely.
That's great. So people can get a hold of you that way, and I'm sure you get a lot of people listening in and then getting a hold of you. And again, you work closely, like you said, with CPAs and other people in the community. So you definitely hear from hopefully some listeners and get some new business from that. That's what I wish for you. That'd be great.
Thank you. Yeah, anybody I can help in the community, I just want to be a resource. So I appreciate the opportunity to get my name out there and see who I can help.
Great. And thank you again, Jen. I'm sure our listeners will love the conversation. And thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Craig. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Great. That brings us to the end of another episode. We'll see you on the next one.
Behind Closed Books podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.